The political discourse emanating from Israel in the last few days is quite unprecedented in the history of that country. For example, this is what Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid said after a security briefing meeting with the government of Benjamin Netanyahu.
I arrived at the briefing with Netanyahu worried, and I left even more worried. What our enemies see in front of them in all arenas is an incompetent government, a cabinet no one trusts. We are losing our deterrence. Israel has become a country that is not being managed. The Times of Israel also quoted Lapid as saying that Israel is losing the support of the US and the international community.
This raises two questions. Number one, is Israel indeed losing its deterrence? And number two, is Israel losing the support of the world? I will start with the second question first. But to answer that question, we have to raise another question. Was Israel actually ever popular worldwide? Look at the way that countries around the world voted in terms of Israeli and Palestinian related resolutions at the United Nations. You will find that the vast majority of the globe have voted in favor of Palestinian rights and in criticism of Israel. But what Lapid was actually referring to is not Israel's popularity worldwide. He was referring to countries that have traditionally supported the United States, thus Israel, whether in the Middle East region or around the world. These countries are now moving elsewhere, because they realize that the United States has retreated from the Middle East region. Speaking of retreat, this did not actually start with the Ukraine-Russia war. It started much earlier, particularly 2012. But what happened then?
During his administration, former US President Barack Obama decided to shift his country's focus from the Middle East region to the Asia-Pacific region. Especially starting from 2012, Obama decided to pursue what is known as the pivot to Asia. And the pivot to Asia was particularly accelerated following the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war in February 2022.
Now these countries do not really see the need to support Israel, whether overtly or covertly, in order for them to win leverage with Washington. Because Washington, it turned out, is no longer interested in the Middle East, or at least not as interested as they were in 2003 when they invaded and occupied Iraq at the very high cost of hundreds of thousands of lost lives. How about the second point regarding Israel's deterrence? Is Israel really losing its deterrence capabilities in the region? In actuality, Israel is as strong, if not even stronger, compared to its last major war on Gaza in May 2021. So what is Lapid referring to? Lapid is referring to the fact that Israel is no longer able to contain conflict with the Palestinians and its Arab neighbors on one single front at a time. In the last few days, Palestinians and various Arab resistance have been firing rockets at Israel from Gaza, from South Lebanon, and also from Syria, while Palestinian organized military groups within the West Bank have also been unleashing all sorts of attacks against the Israeli occupation regime. This is unprecedented because historically Israel has always managed to focus on one Arab resistance group or region at a time. This is no longer feasible. And it's not feasible because Syria is emerging after the war from the ashes of this war a bit stronger than before. Hezbollah doesn't feel the need to remain passive as Israel continues to attack Palestinians and Lebanese targets, and Gaza is under an Israeli siege. In a way, they really have nothing to lose. And this is the moment that they have been looking for, that the fact that other Arab countries are also standing up to Israel. All of this was triggered in recent days when Israel attacked the Al-Aqsa Mosque, where they beat and humiliated hundreds of Palestinian worshippers who were praying at the Al-Aqsa Mosque at the time of the Israeli raid. Israel thought this is going to be just another raid at Al-Aqsa. What Israel did not realize is that the geopolitics of the Middle East has changed so significantly that the Palestinian response will not only emanate from Gaza alone, or Nablus or Jenin, but rather from Lebanon, Syria, and throughout Palestine, all at the same time. That's not the kind of deterrence that Israel was preparing for. And the fact that the Americans are not there to bail them out every time, and Arabs are busy with something entirely different from a geopolitical perspective, Israel is finding itself trapped like never before. But what are the Arabs busy with? Enter China.
On April 6, the China brokered agreement between Saudi Arabia and the Islamic Republic of Iran was eventually finalized after being announced last month when the Iranian foreign minister met in Beijing and shook hands with his Saudi counterpart and the Chinese counterpart. China is now the new Middle East peace broker.
And from a historical point of view, it's quite difficult to imagine Israel escaping this trap anytime soon. The US will not pivot back to the Middle East in the next year or 2 or 10. And the Middle East is shifting alliances from the United States to elsewhere. This was Ramzy Baroud. Thank you for tuning in.